I can have invested in a great company, and then China goes into lockdown. It's a local U.S. company, had sources everything here, and the market just goes down, and my value in that company that I own in that company is just tanked because of because Russia invaded the Ukraine. It has nothing to do with the actual business plan. Whereas when you invest in real estate, you have control over it. You know what it is. It's a safe asset. It's insured. If it burns down, you're fine. If everything goes horribly wrong and they take it back, it's fine because they sell it at auction and it still has value, and the limited partners are safe and fine.
Welcome to Trial to Triumph, hosted by Caleb Johnson, the show about leaning into life's constant testing on your way to realizing your biggest blessings.
How's it going, everyone? This is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph. I'm very excited about our guest today. We have Tim Fergestead. Tim has an engineering background as well as, so many stories on the real estate side, mainly focused on apartments, but we'll get into that later today. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So can you give our listeners just a quick background about where you've come from, college, and how you're here today?
Sure. I come from Minnesota originally, and I not quite engineering. I had degrees in physics and chemistry, so I'm definitely in that scientific realm. I'm pretty nerdy and numbers oriented. But I have a PhD in neuroscience. So my previous position was in the genetics department at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And when my wife finished her residency and became the breadwinner, she was pregnant with our first kid when we came to Phoenix about 15 years ago. So we decided to pivot a little bit there, and I became a stay-at-home dad, raised our kids. And then when they were both in school, I wanted to get out and do something again. And real estate was something that was flexible for me, so I could be the fill gap. If my wife was on a 24-hour OB shift or something, I'd be the guy still dealing with everything. And real estate allowed me to still do that. I've always liked real estate, and I always liked making things better, I guess, and that's something that appealed to me. So I started doing. I got a license here. I wanted to flip and hold some of my own plexes here in the Phoenix area. It wasn't very, the market still isn't great for some of that, in my opinion. So I went to other markets where it was. And so I got rental properties in other states and in other markets, and started doing other stuff, but ultimately realized that my passive investments in multifamily syndications were outperforming all my other asset classes and were way easier. And so I decided to start focusing on those actively myself. I still invest in other people's deals that way as a limited partner, but as an active partner, I decided about a year and a half ago to start focusing on multifamily myself. Okay.
And before we get into the real estate, I kind of want to touch on something you said earlier, was that you took the role of a stay-at-home dad. Mm-hmm. And
I call it trophy spouse.
Trophy spouse. Okay.
That's
I'll
right.
call that the title of this episode, Trophy Spouse.
That's fine.
Yeah, so...
My wife doesn't like that, by the way. But yeah, that's fine.
Well, I think a lot of times, sometimes men, I'll just take it there, that some men might have a problem with that. Maybe if they want, they don't want to take that role, and they aren't mature enough to do that. And I've had those moments myself where it's a hard pill to swallow, you could say. But what was the ultimate? What was your mindset going into that, if that makes sense?
Sure. It was kind of hard for me to get over and figure out as well. I didn't grow up playing with dolls and stuff, and when it comes time to do my daughter's hair, I'm like, I'm not your guy, So that was tricky. But I figured it out. It was fun. It was absolute joy and luxury to be able to stay home and be with the kids and stuff. It was, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But it was not what I anticipated, or my wife. Right? She sort of struggled at times with having to be the breadwinner, right? But we reevaluate every once in a while. Like, yeah, this is still what we want. This still makes sense. It's just, it's not. I drove several minivans over those years, and I never wanted a motorcycle more in my life than then.
Do you have a motorcycle now?
I do not. I do not. Although my wife said I can get one again now.
Good. All right, put it on the Christmas list.
I had to get a new license, and I saw I still had the endorsement, so I guess I'm still good.
Cool. Okay. So getting into the real estate, I know just following your real estate career, I know your story a little bit, and I just like to, start. There's a couple deals in Tennessee, I believe. So can you give us a background about that story and just what wrong and kind of how you overcame that?
Sure. Well, last year we had a deal in Nashville, which was, it's called East Nashville, but it's really North Nashville. I don't understand that still. But this was a deal one of my partners had found, and it was a great deal. It was actually a motel conversion that we didn't do. Somebody else converted it. That was their business plan, and they wanted to lease it up and sell it. And so they leased it up with some crappy tenants right away, and then we had to deal with that. That was the problem once we got it. But we barely got it because we had lender issues, and that's a recurring theme in my experience. Is the lenders seem to hold a lot of the cards, and well, for example, in this deal, there's always hiccups in every deal. There's always problems. Things come up, and you got to be able to deal with them, be creative, find a solution. But one of the last things we expected was it was a bridge loan. And it was through a good broker. It's just the lender that they used 4 days, I think it was, before closing. They decided not to fund the deal. They changed their mind right before closing. And thankfully, one of the lessons there is always have an extension in your contract, and we did. So we were able to extend, and we were able to race and get another bridge loan. The terms weren't quite as good, but we were able to still get it and close in time. And so that was scary, right? Because this was a year ago. The market was hot, and Nashville was super hot, and it was earnest money hard, right, at day one. And so, and I was a big part of the at-risk capital on that deal, and that was some stressful times, to be sure. Now, I'd like to say though that these are remember, motel conversions. These are micro studio units, so they're really tiny. But I think right now we're getting the most per square foot in Nashville for that property, which is great.
Mm-hmm. I want to touch on two things from that, and the first being, I've had some lender experiences myself where it wasn't 4 days, thank God, because that's crazy, and having an extension, I'm sure, helps with that a lot. Now, what was the reasoning? Can you touch on a little bit about what was their reasoning that they didn't want to pursue the deal?
Not really. This was bedrock, by the way. I'll share that was the lender. And we had gotten wind like a few weeks earlier that they weren't going to do deals under 40 million anymore. And they said, but don't worry, we'll do yours, because ours was not even half that, right? So yeah, it was, yeah. So it was about a $15 million purchase, and they said, yeah, we'll do yours, but we're moving away from that size of property or investment class. And a week or two beforehand, they still hadn't communicated some things you normally communicate before closing. And we were like, hey, hello, is everything okay? And the loan broker said, yeah, they said everything's fine. And we were like, well, what about the final inspection report, or some things like that, which we know they did most of it. But they by the way, there's things, right, that some of the listeners may not know. You have a good faith deposit with lenders, so basically you give them $30,000 to $80,000 depending upon the loan size and the work involved and stuff, as just to cover their expenses. And when they bailed on us, they kept all that, because they're like, yeah, we had to pay all our expenses. We had legal fees and other stuff and inspectors and stuff that we had to pay. So we were just out that. And that's totally legal, by the way. It's totally fine. And I think that's terrible. So they just, yeah, it wasn't, I think, does that kind of answer your question? So that was basically, uh, they didn't give us a good reason. They would just were shifting their business model away from that, even though they told us that we were fine. Then they changed their mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate the transparency there. And my second question is how the mindset shift. 4 days. I mean, $15 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 days before you're supposed to close. Yes, you have an extension baked in, so that gives you some breathing room. But what are your first thoughts when you get the news of that happening?
Yeah, we're not going to close. I'm going to lose my earnest money. That was my first thought. It's very scary. And the good news is both parties were willing to do the transaction, right? The seller and the buyer are still on the same page. You're willing to work it out, and that's generally how it goes. There has been more in the past several months with interest rates going up and stuff. A number of lenders, particularly bridge lenders, retrading in the last week or two, because again, they hold all the cards and they're like, yeah, we're not going to do this unless we're going to raise the rate or make you pay some more fees or something. And they have you, right? You're like, well, what am I going to do, right? And that's, again, totally legal, but should be illegal.
Yeah, this is mid-August 2022, so that's okay. That's good to know. Now, the Texas property, something else happened there. So
Yes.
So you've had some bumpy roads, man, and I love hearing about this. So
that's where the real education is, for sure.
Yeah.
One of my
let's
mentors.
talk about that deal.
Sure. One of my mentors is Rod Cleef, and when these happen to him, he calls them seminars, and I like that. It's a nice way to think about it. So I had an expensive seminar earlier this year in Texas, West Texas, and it was a good deal, good property. Well, it wasn't super sexy. It was a C-class property in a C area, but the numbers worked. It's been tough to find good deals, and we finally found one. We had an equity partner who said, we write bigger checks. Don't bring me these $4 or $5 million or whatever equity raises you need. I want to write at least a $10 million check. I have $100 million to deploy this quarter, right? And I want something big and stuff. So my partners, some other different partners, went out, found a property that fit that criteria, and they signed off on it. They go, okay, great, that's fine. Can we close by this date? And they said, sure. Yep, we'll do. We'll start. Yeah, get your due diligence done. Make sure everything's good, and then come back to us, and we'll start our raise, and we'll do our thing. And a number of things happened on that deal in the process. One, it was early 2022. We had interest rates start to go up. We had cap rates start to be required. Rate caps, which got really expensive really fast. And so that was a really big, several $100,000 increase cost out of nowhere that we didn't see coming. And then the rate increases also made our loans unfavorable. We had A10, another lender I don't mind mentioning, bail on us.
I've heard of them before, and they're I think that's might be their reputation, but.
They say nice things up front, right, to get you going with them, and then they sort of retrade you. But they go, yeah, we can't even close by that date. And our seller had kind of a pretty firm deadline because their loan was maturing. They needed to sell by a certain time, and we were kind of under the gun for that reason. So we had to get another lender with less favorable terms. So that part of the deal got worse, and a rate cap, and the rates went up again and stuff on us. It was. All that stuff got worse and worse and worse. And then the property also had a lot more surprises in it. There's supposed to be like 8 down units, and there was more. And there was this is like a 300 some unit property, so it was pretty big. It was like a $30 million deal. And we and then our capital partner started to bail on us. And that's the problem with having a big whale for equity, right? Because in a sense, they can retrade you as well because they hold a lot of the cards. If they change their mind, right? They're like, he actually told us to get an extension for 3 months. And our seller wasn't doing that and stuff. So again, we actually lost earnest money on that deal, which was sad. That was the real seminar. But there's a lot of lessons there for sure.
Okay. whenever it comes to the capital, so just to give our listeners a little bit of backstory, a capital raiser, right? So let's say Tim finds a deal and he needs a $10 million check. So the capital raiser is going to come in and write a $10 million check. And it's not that cut and dry, of course. There's many different levers to pull, but that is kind of just what Tim is saying.
There's different, if I can add something. So there's different types of capital sources, right? So there are broker dealers, right? And these are people who are licensed to raise funds. There are other people. Often we just team up with other people to help run the deal, and we all try to raise capital, and some are better at it than others, and so forth. This particular individual actually has a good reputation with Northmark broker, and so they're a big loan broker, and they vouched for the guy there vouched for him. Said, yeah, this guy just brought $90 million for this development deal, right? So he brings big checks, and so we're like, oh, great, that's awesome. That could be rocket fuel for some of our deals. That was awesome. And so we figured we were fine, but yeah. So there's different sources. There's different series of licensing for being able to get different types of funds for that in that scenario. Family offices. There's some bigger financial houses that can sometimes write big checks, but usually they want a little more control and or better return. Right. So then the cheap bank loans that we get, because these products are so great and they're so stable, but it's just find that capital. And, there's a rule that you sometimes hear that, oh, if you find the deal, the money will come. And it's like, if you have a great network, right. Maybe that's true. Maybe you can, right? But if I wasn't able to shop that around fast enough. Plus, like I said, there's a lot of things changed on the deal, which made it a lot less attractive. Every week, something happened. We're like, oh, that's going to cost us. Oh, that's going to cost us. And at one point, we're like, yeah, no, it's not worth trying to do this deal anymore. So that's why we had to walk. I probably wouldn't do anything different. And I think we made the right decision. So yeah, things have only gotten worse. The rates have gone up. Anyway, so. Those were.
And so if you could go back to looking for a capital raiser, right? So you're at that point where you're vetting this guy, and it sounded like you did vet this company or this gentleman, and from a Northmark, and Northmark is a very reputable, very large company that focuses on commercial real estate. So what, if you could impart some wisdom on our listeners and myself, what would you have changed differently whenever you're looking for that person?
I would have a better relationship with them, with the broker, with the capital raiser, with everybody. Relationships are everything in this field. I didn't appreciate relationships and networks so much. Coming from like a scientist background, it wasn't. I can't lean on friends and colleagues to find me data, to get me grants, to review my science and stuff, because it's all done like by peer reviewed, blind review, because you don't want any bias in it, right? You have to make sure it's even your grants are reviewed, by different people that you aren't supposed to know on purpose, right? It's supposed to. You can't. There's not a lot of nepotism and stuff in that field. And so when I've heard the saying, your network is your net worth, I didn't appreciate that until I got into real estate more and more into just business in general, and realized, wow, this is true. Because that's how I found pretty much all my deals right now. Right now, people bring me deals. I try to find deals here locally. It's really hard, right? Phoenix is a tough market. And, yeah, so that's how, and now that I'm doing more capital raising and stuff, that's huge, right? Your network is absolutely, what you can contribute and your net worth. So it's been true in my experience. It's just something I didn't fully appreciate originally.
Okay. Now, if you're in that position now where, let's say you have a deal, and so you don't have time, a month to really build a relationship because you guys have to get the ball rolling on this property. So would your advice be to not even pursue a property unless you already have those built up relationships, or is there something else that we could do?
Well, kind of. In a sense, I know some really good operators who are like, they don't look for properties until they have their capital in place, or at least they don't put offers in until they have their capital in place, right? And so they're always, these relationships, you have broker relationships, so if you have a good enough network and good enough relationships with enough other operators, you're going to probably be able to team up to take down a big deal. Depends on how big it is. You might have to bring in an extra KP or an extra couple of capital raisers or something, and all work together on it. But it's a balance, right? I would generally, if you're raising capital when you need it, it's too late. That's the rule that I like. You basically want to have most of it together in some capacity, and before you sign on a purchase sale agreement.
What was the takeaway from that? Would you still even put up EMD? Because sometimes that is a very important role in these transactions that you're doing, right? So
it is
that
for sure.
So what'd you learn from that?
Well, some of that's going away right now, or at least there's some more financial contingencies. People are starting to put back into their PSAs. I'd also say that it depends on the market. Like right now we have another great deal under contract in Nashville again, and I helped put in some of the at-risk capital again. So in a sense, I got back on that horse. But it's kind of a necessary evil. There's a lot. It's not just earnest money, right? There's costs associated with searching for deals, finding them, doing the due diligence, flying out to that market if it's not your local one, getting the retainer for the attorneys, getting like I said, the even if there's not hard earnest money at day one, which was very common for the past couple of years, there's still going to be your good faith deposits with people and others. There's all sorts of costs associated with these big projects, and somebody's got to pay them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody's got to, right?
Yep.
And so
I'd like to add something there though, is historically, like, it's given a very small percentage of the GP role for doing that. And I think that should have gone up during riskier times, right? Because that's what it is. You're just, all investments are just return versus risk. And I think I could have negotiated more for that, but I still would have lost it. So it wouldn't, it wasn't like I could have done anything differently per se, but I still think that's, it's valuable. It's valuable. And it should be negotiated appropriately.
Yeah. All learning lessons. Now, I know some people are listening to this, and I know I have some family members in mind that they're more W-2 focused. And so to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then, like you said earlier, you got back on that horse, they would be pulling their hair out like, are you kidding me? And maybe you've done that already. But so is all of that worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would say, well, there's what is it? The struggle is the crucible in which character is forged, or something like that. Like, there's a lot of variants of things like that, but yeah, that's the seminar. That's what makes you smarter and stronger and tougher and wiser. And I like one of Warren Buffett's rules, right? Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. But in reality, he's lost a bunch of money on different things like this. It's a good rule, and I try to follow it as much as I can. But there's risk with everything, and that's one of the things about being a limited partner in these deals. There's really not much risk, right? There's a lot of risk in the market. All right, I've been in the market a lot. I've lost money. It's so crazy. I really like that. I'd call that the casino, because that's generally, I can have invested in a great company, and then China goes into lockdown. It's a local U.S. company, had sources everything here, and the market just goes down, and my value in that company that I own in that company is just tanked because of because Russia invaded the Ukraine. It has nothing to do with the actual business plan. Whereas when you invest in real estate, you have control over it. You know what it is. It's a safe asset. It's insured. If it burns down, you're fine. If everything goes horribly wrong and they take it back, it's fine because they sell it at auction and it still has value, and the limited partners are safe and fine. So it's absolutely, and the returns are more consistent and better than the market. It seems like a no-brainer. So yeah, I don't have any trouble staying in the multifamily space. No.
Yeah, that's very well said. And right, like you said, the stocks, it's more your money is so liquid, and that's why it's
Yep.
so volatile, right? Because you
That's one of the reasons. Yeah.
and
But it's
with
that's
this,
one of the downsides for real estate for sure, right? Is
right?
particularly like a syndication.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's I mean you're in there for however long you're going to hold that. So typically 5 years, and but with that, it is like you said, the building burns down, you have insurance. There are things in place, and as a limited partner, it's one of the most secure investments. And I'm not an attorney, so do your own due diligence. But that's why you and I are in this business, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
I will say this though, there are some changes in the sort of the blockchain space that are really maybe taking on that illiquidity issue in some of these deals where you can. There's some sort of tokenization. I'm not an expert, but I've seen this has been going on for a while, but it's just finally starting to get traction in the last year or so, where you can sell your shares in an investment more readily on different sort of tokenized markets or something. So it's still I don't know. I don't know the details. I'm not a syndication attorney or something, but yeah. So that might not be coming too far away.
yeah, okay, good. And it's crazy how many new things are coming available, so that's one reason why it's so good to listen to these sort of things and talk to people, network, because like you said, net worth is your network. So even if you're not working with someone that's going to raise $10 million, you can still learn a little piece of knowledge on something like this. So
Sure. Or just you get to meet somebody who knows somebody who can help you find that answer. Anyway, it's
right.
It's huge.
Well, Tim, I think we'll start ending the show here. But before we depart, I want to ask you 3 questions. If you can share with our listeners one book that's really impacted you, what would that be?
I was going to say The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, but there's probably I like Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is very similar. It's just a little more. It dives down a little bit more and gives you some more actionable items and ways to implement systems, if you know what I mean. So Atomic Habits. There's a great. I can summarize it with one quote, I think, from James Clear, which I like. It's, "We don't rise to our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems." And right, and that's kind of the way things are. We're emotional beings and stuff, and we have good ideas, and we know what we want, but then we get tired and we make bad decisions, right? Or we get frustrated and we change our mind or something. But if you don't, make your decisions and set up your fundamental routines to achieve your goals, and you will. Right? You don't have to have like stellar days, day after day after day, right? Anyway, so that was pretty much it.
Yeah, you reminded me of that book because I read that book probably a couple years back, and that really changed my life. Honestly, like you said, it's about the systems, and
Awesome.
yeah, that's such a good book. Such a good book. And if people want to learn more about you or potentially invest and work with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, Tim Fergestad. Also, you can go to my website, oakstreetassets.com. I have 2 great deals going on right now. One in North Dallas, A class, really nice, and one in Nashville, which is a B class, 145 units. Really excited about that one too. They're both awesome. Look at the returns. We're projecting some great stuff, so we're excited.
So it sounds like those are 506Cs.
They're both 506Cs, yeah. So I can talk about them and tell everybody.
Yep.
Which is nice because, right. So if the listeners don't know, normally there's 2 different Reg D exemptions, right? And 506B and 506C, and 506B is like the family and friends thing where you have to have a pre-existing relationship and they have to be accredited, or they have to at least know a little bit and have a relationship with you. Whereas 506Cs, I can advertise and tell everybody, so it's great. But everybody has to be an accredited investor, which means you have to make a certain amount or have a certain net worth.
And to put a bow on this, if you can give our listeners one piece of advice, what would that be?
I'm going to circle back and say systems. Set up systems. Figure out what you want and why you want it, and then work backwards, right? And then just figure out what you need to do that, and set up those systems, those routines, and just start chugging away. And you'll fall short some days, but you just keep at it, right? It's just commit to it. Know why, and you will, right? Figure out what's driving you and what you want, and plan it out. It's not hard. It's a lot of things that everybody knows how to be a millionaire or have 6-pack abs, right? It's just most people don't do it because they don't have systems, they don't have routines, right? And they at night they get tired and they want ice cream and just sit on the couch and watch a show, Netflix.
Right. Yeah. And while we're on that quickly, what's been one habit that's really helped you grow?
Good question. It's, I guess, having kids, it's been getting up earlier, because in the morning I get up and I get my most important stuff of the day done. Right. I try to prioritize that. What's the most important thing? It's not necessarily the most urgent thing either. That's important to point out, because that's how we spend our days, is running around putting fires out and answering emails all day. But emails are other people's most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said that, because I need to implement that. That's a habit I need.
So I block out some time in the morning where I work on what is the most important thing for me to achieve my goals, and then the rest of the day is trying to push everything else forward.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, yeah, let's end it on that note.
All right.
Tim, really appreciate your time coming on here, and I learned quite a few things from today. So I appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great time.
Yeah.
Look forward to talking again.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.